did take it.
Oh, no. We figured
That's
it
more
out.
than he's going to do, so sorry. All right, guys, my pleasure to introduce the new Hobbins. Another one of many grown coaches at the college level. Played Shepherds, Lord Bedford. So close enough, the same thing everybody went at. At St. Lawrence University now, does a really outstanding job. Comes back in the summer, works a lot of our camps, works a lot of our kids. And he's here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you guys for coming. I grew up in Saco. Was fortunate enough to play Pee Wee football in Biddeford, so certainly learned the right way to play football. Then I went to Shepherds, got to play for Coach Wolfgram. Went to Assumption for a couple of years after that, then went to Alfred University out in Western New York. After I graduated, coached 3 years at University of New England. Then during the COVID fall, was up in Huston for a cup of coffee, and then I've been at St. Lawrence for over 2 years. So I've coached DBs primarily, worked a season at Huston with outside linebackers. And then this year, I'm transitioning from the safeties in our SAM, essentially, to our safeties and corners. And you guys will probably see, corners is probably my favorite position to coach. So I'm really excited about that. But today we're going to talk about kind of our football fundamentals for our defensive backs. First things first, right? The fundamentals of playing defensive back is being able to either cover people or cover a zone, right? If you can't do either of those things, well then you're just a linebacker pretending to be a defensive back. So we're going to focus on man coverage, zone coverage, and at the end we will talk a little bit about tackling. I know some of you guys are probably expecting some special teams stuff. If you do want to talk special teams, we can talk drills, and I do have a shield punt presentation that we can run through at lunch or find some time. We'd be more than happy to do that. I'm also the special teams coordinator at St. Lawrence. And my contact info, email, feel free to reach out. Last year, we clinicked with some high schools about our shield punt. So whether it's not today, if that's something you want to get on later, maybe more of your staff, would be more than happy to do that as well. So kind of going over what we're going to be looking at today, kind of like our everyday techniques, right? Our pre-practice stuff. So 5 minutes before we even get into walkthroughs and all that, we'll do some of our everyday drills. And then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about man tech. Not quite as much time about zone. And then if we get to it, we'll talk about kind of how we grade our tackling and the 5 different measurements that we use that we call the 5 fights. So, kind of looking at some of our everyday techniques, okay? In our off stance, right? We're gonna have the same stance whether we're showing zone or man, right? Because we're a one high team, right? We're a cover 3, cover 1, that's it, right? And this year, we didn't really do any too high shell stuff. So, I mean, we were lining up in what we were playing. There wasn't a lot of rotations, wasn't a lot of disguising. Some of that had to do with our kids, some of it had to do with the scheme, just what we did best. But so even when we're in our zone coverage, our stance is still going to be portraying man. Our alignment is still going to be portraying man. So because we can't disguise a lot of things with movement, right, we're trying to make everything for that first second that quarterback snaps the ball to look the exact same. Right? So when we're talking about our off stance, okay, at most our feet are hip width apart. Okay? I'd like to see that even potentially be a little bit narrower. Right? And our feet are always straight or pigeon-toed. Okay? If they're slightly pigeon-toed, fine with that. Right? What I don't want to see is feet pointing out. Okay? Feet pointing out brings a lot of issues. It's harder to transition. And whenever your feet are pointed out, it also brings your hips forward. Right? You think about a squat, a clean, right? All of these movements, right? We don't want to live in that world. Okay? So we also want to be on the pads of our feet. Right? Everybody talks about the ball of your feet, but when you think about that, many people think of the big toe, right? Which means that my weight is now going to be on the inside of my foot, which some people teach so you can push off. That's not what we teach at St. Lawrence, okay? We want to be extremely light on our feet. So when I say the pads of our feet, okay, I really mean from where my big toe starts all the way to where my pinky meets the outside of my foot. That's what I mean by pads of our feet, right? So I don't want my heels on the ground in my stance, right? I want those heels elevated, Okay? To do that, with the same philosophy of being light on our feet, we are going to think about picking up our ankles. Okay? Everything with our joints, right? We want to be thinking about creating space and separation instead of them pretty much compounding on each other, right? So if I'm trying to dig in on the inside of my feet, right? Knees knocked, right? Then now I'm putting pressure into my ankle, putting pressure into my knee, putting pressure into my hips, right? We don't want that. We want to be as light as possible, okay? Now our hand position varies, right? If you're an off man, right? I don't need to have my hands up. I can be nice, comfortable if I'm in zone. I can have my hands up, no big deal, right? When we get into press, that's going to be a little bit different. Now going into our next technique, all of our DBs pedal. I know people have gotten out of kind of the pedal world, but we live it. So we work different tempo pedals every single day, right? We'll work a weave, and really when you're thinking about backpedaling, right? As I'm backpedaling, I am just waiting to transition into running. That's all I'm doing, right? I am just waiting, whether it's braking on a 45, braking downhill, transitioning open, right? All of those different things. I'm just backpedaling to wait to run, right? So we go back into, talking about those feet a little bit. If I'm slightly pigeon-toed, okay, when I transition to open up, I'm not planting off of here. I know it might be kind of hard for some of you to see, but I'm already going to have my knee, right, and hip already pointed in the direction that I want to go to. Working more of a pivot system than just pushing into the ground, right? Because when I push into the ground, just like this, right, I'm putting force this way when my body's trying to go this way, right? So I want that nice pigeon-toed on that transition, opening up and running. So then we talk about our pedal punch, right? Because in our man technique stuff, we want to disrupt reps, right? But we also want to be sound. We don't play catch man, where we're flat-footed, taking the charge, where people are much more, lenient on people throwing two hands in their punch. We are a single hand punch team, opposite arm, opposite leg. Okay? When we kind of look into the press world, right? Now we're not going to be in a staggered stance. We're going to be, once again, right, ideally hip width. Now you get a high hipped athlete, right, high hip bone, right? There's probably going to be a little bit more flexibility in what you allow their stance to be. Right? Just because there's a little bit, it might be a little bit harder for them to be real narrow. Right? But if you have a low hipped athlete, right, they should be able to be in that nice narrow stance. When we're thinking about routes, right, when we get an in-braking route, because we're always going to be inside leverage, right, I want to think more about crushing that down, because he's running into me, so I have leverage. Right? I should be able to get real physical with him and not essentially allow him to run across face post. Right? Versus, right, he's running a corner route, well, I have to be in a position to punch, open up, and run. So we think out-braking routes, punch and run. Inside braking routes, we want to crush those down in our man coverage. Okay? When we press, right, a lot of those same rules apply. Okay? We want to crush down inside braking routes. Right? We don't want him to gain any distance vertically in our press for any in-braking routes, right? Because then he'll stack us and beat us on a post. Okay? But when we press, we always throw our inside hand. Right? And the reason that we do that is to eliminate thinking from that position. Okay? So we always will take a jab step with our outside hand, whether it's an in-braking route or an inside release or an outside release, we are always punching with our inside hand. Okay? It's just, pressing is one of the hardest things to do, so we try to fix as many things as we can to try to make a physically demanding task as easy as possible. And if you guys have any questions, need more clarification, right? If you're not getting it, I'm not explaining it the right way, so feel free to raise your hand, interrupt, doesn't bother me at all. Okay, so, right, press man, okay, like I said, inside leverage. My nose is going to be on the inside tip of their shoulder, or their inside shoulder, the tip of their inside shoulder, right? When I take that jab step, right, my nose should now essentially split his shoulder and his ear, right? So that really emphasizes this is just a very slight jab step, right? That same principle, take out my feet, all that stuff becomes even that much more important in press, right? The other biggest thing in press, right, is it's your feet first, right? The longer you can stay in a shuffle in your press, the more effective you're gonna be, okay? As soon as you get into a crossover run, outside releases fade, crossover run, we're now in a bad deal, right? Because he's in control of everything. Okay, in our off man, right, whether you're a team that likes to read 3-step from the quarterback or you're just reading routes, right, the tempo of your pedal should be different based on 3-step or 5-step, wherever you're getting that information, right? So if it's 3-step, right, until that receiver clears 3-step or until that quarterback clears 3-step, wherever your key is, right, that should be a very slow, melt out pedal. Now, once the quarterback gets into a 5-step drop, once that receiver clears 5 yards, right, my tempo should change. Why? Because I've got new information, right? That now means that it's some type of 5-step route. Okay, I know there's some people that live in that intermediate world of 8-yard outs and things like that, but for base teaching, that's what we do. Your tempo should change as soon as whatever information, whether it's the quarterback or the route, is past 3-step depth. Right, one thing that we'll definitely see on film, to punch or not to punch, and that happens a lot in the slot, right? When a guy reroutes himself or really aborts his angle, essentially, right? Well, I don't want to punch air if I can't touch it. So that's something that we talk a lot about being in the contact zone, right? When we look into our slot man, okay, right, we got to understand the split and the help. Right, we didn't go too far into that. We were all inside leverage. That's something that, especially down towards the goal line, where everything is more condensed, where you have that, that one high post safeties, really just playing robber technique, where you could play around with some leverages. This past year, we were all inside leverage. Another thing, when we're down there, we want to force the corner ball. Okay, and we'll see sometimes it worked for us, sometimes it didn't. And then the slot, right? I put the emphasis on the slot when we're in man coverage to be on a different level than the corner, right? Those guys are usually the ones more tied in. They have a little bit more help, right? So the corners, let them do their job, right? They don't think. Let those guys not do anything except for cover the best athletes on the field, right? So we put it on the slot to make sure that we're at different levels in our man alignment, so when we get rub routes and pick routes, those guys don't run into each other. So this first clip, you'll see a really good example of staying in your shuffle until he doesn't, right? So there's a lot of things that aren't great about this clip, but you see he stays in that shuffle, and then as soon as he gets to that crossover step, what does the receiver do? Wipes his ass by, beats him on a slant, right? So right here, right, he can still work on almost a 45-degree angle and keep widening him, right? So as I'm riding that receiver, right, I got through my inside hand, he tries to work back, I'm just going to crush it down, and he can't cross my face. Now, if I get a little bit too far over the top and he wipes, right, that's when I would want to use a switchback technique. Now, one other thing I should have talked about in our stance, okay, you'll see it over and over by this kid, it's number 4, right, is I want our hips back in our stance, right? I don't emphasize proud chest. I want our hips back, okay? There's a bunch of different reasons, right? But one of the reasons is if I punch with my chest up here, right, and he gives me some type of resistance, where's his energy going? Right through me, right? If I got my hips back, chest down a little bit, I punch, he gives me some resistance, all of that resistance is being absorbed into my body and into my trunk, right? So I want to be hips back, right, and up. Now they'll eventually start settling in a little bit lower, but we really emphasize those hips back. This corner, number 4, really struggled with it. We'll see on film number 3, our other corner did a really good job with it. Now, he doesn't know how to punch, but that's college football. All right, and the other thing is, when we talk about that punch, our aiming point, is I call it the shoulder ball, right? It's where your shoulder meets your chest, okay? This little part right in here, right? Because I want to disconnect his shoulder and arm for the rest of his body. I do that by attacking the joint. When I do that, right, I want to create turn. Right? You see right here, he just pushes the outside of his shoulder. That doesn't do much. Right? You're not influencing him or turning him from where he wants to run. Right? So really emphasizing the strike point of that punch. All right, so we're looking down here at the bottom. Right, you can see, yes, his hands are up. Right? Takes that jab step. Right? Throws two. Bad deal. Right? You throw two, easy wipe. Right? Now he does a good job of staying on that hip. Right? He doesn't have a lean on him. Right? What I mean by a lean, if this is the receiver and that's the quarterback, I want to get a lean on him. If I get a lean on him and I'm within 3 yards of the sideline, that's what we talk about, right? Where I'm boxing his ass out and we're 3 yards from the sideline, that's when I can zone turn back to the quarterback, right? If I don't have that lean on him and he's more than 3 yards away from the sideline, I have to turn to the receiver. Why? Because if I'm not 3 yards, even if I'm looking back and hip to hip with him, that quarterback can throw the ball over there, I have no chance. Why? Because I don't have a lean on him. Right? So if you want to look over your inside shoulder as a defensive back, right, he's got to be 3 yards from the sideline, and you better be in him boxing him out. Right, so this is a very high IQ football play down at the bottom. So we jump off sides, right? Center snaps the ball, right? It's a free play. What's everybody run on a free play? Fade ball, right? So you're going to see piss poor technique by this kid, right? Where it helps him here, but we're going to see in a very similar situation, it hurts him later, right? So he knows, hey, they snapped the ball, we jumped off sides, he just starts running the fade for him, right? Now, to somebody that doesn't know football that much, this might look like a half-decent position, right? That's very easy for him to undercut and beat him on a slant. He would have to speed turn, no chance, right? But high football IQ play, right? Leans into him, right? Doesn't feel like he's in a good enough position to look back for the ball, plays with the hands, PBU. Right? I always say the only time you're going to get a pick and man coverage on a well-thrown ball is if you have perfect technique. It's the only way. Right? If you get a pick and man coverage, right, not doing the right thing, it's because the quarterback gave you a gift. Can't count on that. Alright, so exact same situation. Right? We jump off sides. Now, there's a little bit of a difference here. Right? Where are they on the field? Right? They're that much closer. Right? So this route's going to change by this receiver, and you're going to see our defensive back use a very similar technique that now gets exposed. Right? We jump off, he just starts running the fade. Right? Doesn't get in that shuffle. And we're down here, we should stay in that shuffle for as long as possible. Right? So he doesn't stay in that shuffle, he's just running the fade. There's nowhere for the fade to actually go. He gets over the top, boundary, easy pitch and catch. Right? So I want to stay in that shuffle, right, as long as I can. We use essentially, I don't know if this is the right geometry term, okay, but I think it's a 135-degree angle in my mind, basically pointing in each direction from my belly button. Right? So as I'm shuffling, right, as long as he's still on that 135, right, I want to stay in that shuffle. I don't get out of that shuffle until he clears that imaginary line from my belly button. And now this is a big coaching point too, right? Once he finally does clear that, this step is extremely important. You'll see a lot of people, they're shuffling, right? Instead of gaining a lot of ground, right? They just essentially false step. So as I'm shuffling, right? You want to work in your indie, really emphasizing once he clears this, because now I don't have to worry about him wiping back on a slant, right? Because I've shuffled long enough, gotten to 5 yards ideally, he ain't working back on a slant. So once that happens, right, I want to take this foot and gain ground with that step, right? So that half a step that he has on me, because I've allowed him to have it, is then erased. But the big thing here is, right, like he looks like he's got hands on that receiver, which he does. The receiver's controlling him. He's not controlling the receiver. This is exactly what that receiver wants. Why? Because he's just creating space with his lockout to then box him out and get a back shoulder. Okay, so this is a great example of some average technique, but understanding the concept and why it's so important for this guy to crush down any in-breaking routes. Okay? So this is a good concept by the offense, right? Essentially, they're trying to take their boundary receiver and just pick our Mike, who has the back man-to-man, right? Where if he lets him get vertical on his inside release, walk-in touchdown. Right? He throws that inside hand, right? Not great body position right now, but still does not allow him to get vertical. That linebacker doesn't get picked. It's a no-yard gain, right? One thing I do want to emphasize, right? You can see the difference in their stances, right? This kid's got a proud chest, definitely on his heels. I do like how his hands are up. His width and his stance is okay. He was a little bit wider because he's a high-hip athlete, right? Down here, right? This is just about textbook besides the hands. I'd like to see those hands just a little bit higher, right? And yeah, those guys want to look like Deion Sanders out there, hands down, all that kind of stuff. We don't got a Deion in St. Lawrence. All right, so looking up here at the top again. So this is why, right? We want to keep those hips back, right? So you watch at the top versus the bottom, okay? Watch when this receiver goes to create separation. Right? High chest, see ya. Now look at the bottom. Hips are back, tries to wipe them, in a great position to retrace. Right? As soon as you get a proud chest, you are going to work back onto your heels. And we do not want that. Right, so looking at the top. Throws two. Right, once again, for the naked eye, okay, he's in phase. Right, not the end of the world. Because he threw two, it got wiped. He is now off balance. In a sense, he feels like he needs to catch up, even when he is in phase, right? But he's now leaning, he doesn't have good balance. And then when that kid breaks off a comeback, great throw by the quarterback on time, right? That's all it takes. And that kid, number 3, plays a comeback better than anybody I've coached, right? This is just a really bad clip for him. But that's why it's so important, A, punch with one, right? Because that hand gets wiped away. That's fine. I'm going this way, right? Another thing in your punch, okay, and it's very similar to football, thumbs up when we punch. Elbows in, thumbs up, okay? I can't stress that enough. Once again, my hand goes out here and gets hit away, right? That's gonna have a lot more influence. My thumbs up, elbow in, right? That gets hit away, I'm gonna be in a much better position to essentially re-punch or even just fight that off. Okay, and when you're watching film, a lot of times you won't be able to see the kid's hand, but you'll be able to see his elbow. If you see his elbow, right, you know that thumb ain't up. Right? I can't have my thumb up and my elbow out. Right? Physically can't have it. Right? So you want that thumb up, and that needs to get emphasized day after day after day. right? So you see here, right, still not a great punch. You can see that elbow, right? So it doesn't have much influence, but he doesn't throw two, right? So since he doesn't throw two, he's in a much better balanced position here, right? This is exactly what we want. You know, now starting to work to get that hand to the hip to feel if he is going to run a comeback, right? Because if his hip starts sinking down, I know he's going to break, right? But we're in a really good position here, right? Now he's working to still get more of a lean on him. Now, this is where, right, you can get into some trouble on these, right? He looks back. He does not keep his foot speed up when he looks back. This is one of the number one issues with guys when they feel like they're in good position on deep balls down the field, right? When I look back, my feet slow down. That can't happen. You have to keep your foot speed up. As you can see, this receiver re-accelerates, right? And almost gets a really cheap touchdown just because of one little thing after damn near perfect rep.
Later, do you actually do drills working on kids keeping their foot speed up when they're looking back up?
Yeah, so one of the drills that we do, we'll do in phase and out of phase. And unfortunately, we don't film, you know, this past year we didn't film a lot of our drill work. This is definitely something, as we get into spring ball, where filming is a little bit easier. I could definitely get you guys drill work. But so, in phase, out of phase, right? Where essentially, if it's out of phase, that receiver is going to start about this far ahead of me, right? And then it's just go routes for the most part. Now you can incorporate a break one way or the other, but for the most part, we're working go routes, getting back up to that hip, always punching up, right? We always punch up if it's above our waist. If it's below our waist, we're going to punch through, right? Never swiping down, right? If you swipe down, where are you putting that ball? Right where it wants to go, right? Closed fist, punch up. Right? The other thing is, sometimes you get a cheap kick that way as well. Okay? And then, you know, obviously it's going to be hard to punch up anything below your waist. We want to punch through his wrist, because anytime you swipe, okay, kids are naturally going to go for the football, and then you're thinking of it like a baseball swing. Right? I got to have perfect timing to knock that down. Versus if I'm thinking about punching through the wrist, right, I'm never going to miss the football. Right? If I'm swiping for the football, right, there's a lot of room for error there, right? So I either want to punch up or punch through. So as far as off man, this is one of the few clips we're going to look at from the outside position, okay? But even though he's not fresh, you're going to see why this kid was so good at covering comebacks, right? We're going to notice his tempo pedal, right, through three-step. Right? This is a 4th and 11 when this game was actually still a game. So this is one of the most important plays to this point. And about 50 seconds left before halftime. Right? So you see that staggered stance, right? Really slowly melting out. Then he picks it up once he clears 5 yards. Right? Melt, melt, melt. Pass 5, pick it up, transition. Eyes on the hips, and then this is my favorite part of this clip. His shoulders. Okay? If I'm braking, I need to use every little bit I can, right? And that includes my own body weight. Right? So if I want to brake in this direction, I'm going to dip my shoulder. Right? So I'm running, right? I got my hip, he runs a comeback, right? I want to sink this hip, dip this shoulder, right? So now, yes, I'm planting and transitioning, but my body weight is already going to allow me to be there, right? So that shoulder level is something that we talk a lot about in man as well as zone coverage, okay? And this is about as good as it gets for an off man covering a comeback, right? He's got his hand on him, right? Since he's got his hand on him, right, he can look for that football. He knows where he is, right? It's different than what I talked about with a fade. Right, when you're in man coverage on any, you know, intermediate or in break or, you know, shallow route, right? As soon as I get my hand on that guy, I can look for the football. Why? Because if it turns into a scramble drill, he double moves me, I can feel that, right? But it has to be with a short arm. Can't be a long arm. Why? Because he's going to be able to escape me pretty quick if it's a long arm. If it's this short arm, right, or essentially where my arm can be 90 degrees and I can still touch him, right, that's when we can look back for that football in-man coverage. All right, so really good job, right, going up, punching through the hands. Okay, so we're going to look down here at the bottom. Okay, this is one of his worst reps all year. So this is one of the reasons why we are going to look to mess around with some leverage, especially down in the goal line. Okay, because he does have all this help right here. Right, 1, 2, 3. And these guys are sharing the back, and he's just responsible, pretty much robbing quarterback's intentions. Right. Sorry about that. So you're going to see he gets wide, right? And then so when I get wide, okay, I want to plant and change direction. How much ground am I actually gaining? Right? There's no burst out of that. Right? If I'm already this wide, right, I'm not gaining a lot of ground. If I'm in nice and tight, right, when I push off, my whole body moves with it. If I'm wide, my whole body can't move with it because I'm leaving this behind. Right? So I want to be nice and tight here, right? Press, and now you see my whole body weight shifted, right? And now I'm bringing this foot with me instead of it getting left behind, right? But understanding down here, right? I can be a little bit more physical. I might not be thinking about punching and running so much with the outside, right? And this is something I can do a much better job of coaching, right? Where I can be a little bit more physical, right? Maybe it does turn into a little bit more catch-man-ish, right, down here because it has to be, right? Well, you see, right, he gets wide, right? He reads the tracker step really well, right? Anytime a receiver gives you a step like this, you should be going the fucking opposite direction because nobody has ever ran continuously like this, right? All this is, well, jab step gets you going that way, right? And if I'm in the contact zone, right, which just means that he's close enough for me to contact him, right, I can jump that shit, right? Gives that tracker, move the other way, routes over, right? Now he's kind of in between, right? So he's doing what he's taught to do, right? Punch and run, right? That punch misses, right? This receiver does a really good job, and this is something that, you know, that you should teach receivers as well. But if you're going up against this, right, what receivers do, protect that shoulder ball, right? They know that's where I want to fucking punch, right? So they're gonna tuck that in, right? And now you just end up pushing them where they want to go, right? So that's something that you got to pick up on film. Is that kid really good at doing this, right? Or then maybe you want to change your leverage to head up or outside, right? If that's the route that you're worried about. That is something that you should really be paying attention to, especially out of the slot, is how well did those guys protect that shoulder ball. Right, so same kid, same receiver, earlier in the game. Right, a little bit further off. Right, pretty good tempo out. Right. Better punch here. Okay. Now, is he 3 yards from the sideline? No, so he can't look over his inside shoulder, even though he's in great position. Right? Because if he looks over his inside shoulder on this football, it's a touchdown. Why? Because it's thrown back shoulder even in the slot fade, right? I look over here, that slot sits it down, right? Really bad deal. Not only just that, right? But that quarterback can throw that football anywhere there. And that receiver can fade away and make a play on the ball. Okay? So you never turn over your inside shoulder when playing slot or just anytime he's not 3 yards from the sideline. That's really the base rule. Okay, really good job though, staying in phase, playing through the receiver's hands, punching up. All right, really good job hand fighting. Okay, another thing we teach is the grab and throw, right? Receiver's running, okay, if he's got a little bit of a step on me, or even if you're in phase but that kid's faster than you, right? You want to grab his arm and throw it, right? Happens very fast, so it should just look like we're hand fighting, right? If you're worried about getting holding calls with that technique, you can just work the cup technique, where you're not actually grabbing, but you're just cupping that wrist, cupping that wrist, cupping that wrist. Now, I just say grab it because refs don't see it, but if for whatever reason you're worried about that, that's another technique you can use. Right, so this is a great example of when not to punch, okay? This is the best quarterback in the Northeast in Division III football, and this was the best receiver in our conference. Right, receiver does a really good job, right, of avoiding contact. Right? Runs away from him. Why the fuck am I going to stick my hand out and try to run with him? Right? Don't punch what you can't touch. Right? So he's just going to turn and run with him. Right? Not in phase. Right? His hands go up. Our hands go up. Right? Almost turns into a pick. Right? You can see our post player playing off quarterback's intentions. Right? But this is another reason why we want to punch up. Right? That ball is up in the air for a long time, bouncing around. Right? It's another reason why you emphasize everybody always to hustle in the football. Those things count just the same. Okay, this is my favorite clip on this film. Okay, so at the beginning of the year, we were only playing man in the red zone, or I should say green zone, which is the 12 and in. And Castleton did some really good stuff down there. Mesh, I know a lot of people do it, but Mesh was their number one. So, right, you have to make tweaks to your essentially your technique sometimes depending on what they do. So, we knew they were going to run the under from this. So we told that kid, if they run it under, right, you have to get downhill and meet it because we're not canceling it with our insides. Right? That's just how we were playing it, right? So he does a great job of getting downhill on this, right, running with it, right? Touching him with that short arm. Right? You can see he gets that hand on him. Now his eyes go back to the quarterback. Right? Short arm stays there. Quarterback declares. Probably one of the best picks I've seen in a long time. Right? All because he used perfect technique. Right? He got that pick because he used perfect technique. Right? That wasn't even to his man. Right? So this is probably the longest slot route we gave up all year in man coverage. Right, so the big issue here, okay, that punch, is there anything behind it? No, he's just trying to high-five the kid. Right, like when you punch, that thing's gotta be like a shotgun. Right, it has to be twitchy. You're not just letting him run into your hand, you're delivering a blow. Right? And when you talk about that shotgun, right, you want to emphasize too that they don't get too far overextended. Right? So whether it gets hit away, you miss, all those different things, you're still in a good position. Right? I know some offensive line coaches use 90%. Right? I've talked about that before where you don't want to overextend past 90%. Now do that? Yes. Right? It happens. But just to try to emphasize that point of really not lunging when you punch and being within your base, and it's okay if he reroutes himself and you can't punch it. Right? That's fine. You just run with it. Right? But a decent footwork, okay, misses that punch, you see a good wipe by that receiver, but it's because he puts it out there for him to see. Right? If he gives him a shock, much better opportunity. Okay? Now I'd like to see him continue to work that grab and throw. Right? He kind of aborts on it. Okay? And then this is a really good play by the quarterback and the receiver. You'll see when we get into this position. Right here. Right? Can you punch up through his wrist at this point? No, you're too far away. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make him make a spectacular catch. I'm going to rip that inside elbow away and make him catch it one-handed. Right? So he does a great job of ripping that elbow at the catch point. Kid makes a one-handed catch. If you're going to call man coverage and teams make these plays, part of you's got to be able to live with that. Right? Now, give it over and over. Yeah, you might want to get into something else. Right? But play like that, that can't dissuade you the next week from going back to man. Okay, now going into zone stuff. I know I threw a lot of coaching points at you. Do you guys have any questions, anything that you wanted me to recap?
On that crush technique, you talked about like a kid jumping it or crushing him on an inside breaking route. Do you give them permission to do either, or is it like red zone, you want to try to jump and be aggressive, or?
No, it's, for the most part, right, you're always thinking about crushing it down, but that's just, like I use that point to emphasize, like if your feet are right on that tracker step, like you could just stand there and it don't matter, right? So like, you know, I don't really use the word jumping it because then you don't want kids getting a little too, you know, excited. But you know, the big difference between press man and off man with that crushing stuff down is like when we're off man, it's going to be opposite arm, opposite leg, right? But when we're pressed, right, we're going to keep that inside hand as long as we can. Now, if he beats me, then that's going to turn into a switchback pretty quick, right? But we're going to try to dissuade any in-breaking route by our heavy inside leverage and by that initial hard punch. But what you got to rep the shit out of is moving your feet while punching, right? And you should be working moving your feet drills before you even intro the punch, right? So we do a 3-bag drill where you just take 3 agiles, right? And most people kind of do it where it's like, you know, kind of like a, you know, same thing on both sides, right? Where for me, I use 3 bags. I go flat, flat, and then kind of the angle kick, right? Because my in-breaking routes, man, and granted, like this is obviously, you know, a tempo practice with other DBs, like in a drill work, right? But that's just to emphasize them staying flat on any in-breaking, and then when they're outside, right, not just shuffling once or two, and then opening up at a 180, right? I want to shuffle, shuffle, keep widen, until, right, he breaks that plane. Yep, that 135. I don't know, it might, the more I think about it, I think it might just be a 90-degree angle, but, you know, so I'm a football coach. But anything else on the man stuff? Cool. All right, so we are a strictly cover 3 team, right? We'll get into a little bit of our cover 1 post safety at the end, okay? But everything in our cover 3 stuff is to stop 4 verticals. Everything that we teach, base teaching coverage, is all based off of 4 verticals, right? 5 minutes? Okay, so, right, when we talk about 4 verts, right, it's an 18 plus 2 relationship. 18 yards, 2 yards outside the hash. That's where they want to hit the seam balls. That's where our underneath coverage is focused on. Okay? Field versus boundary relationships, right? Boundary shorter throw. My will linebacker is closer to my boundary safety than my Mike is to my field safety. So those relationships are very important. Quarterback intentions versus pattern reading. When we're into the boundary, we are pattern reading. Why? Because that shit's happening fast. You're curl flat, you gotta get intel right away. When you're to the field, right, you can read the quarterback's intentions. He's gonna tell you where that ball is gonna go. Ball's gonna be in the air longer. You got more time to react. Okay? When you're in a deep third, you're 5 yards deeper than the deepest no matter what. Okay? When we're in cover 3, post safety, you're staying within the uprights. Okay? Yeah, you're weaving off quarterback intentions, but you ain't ever leaving the uprights because you got hash to hash. Okay? 5 yards deeper than the deepest, so we can break downhill. Now, when you're playing center field in cover 1, a little bit different, right? You don't have a zone, right? You're really playing off of quarterback's intentions. Now, any ball 30 yards down the field, your ass better be able to cover number to numbers if you want to be a 1-high safety, right? It's different than cover 3. Why? Because you're not restricted to staying within those uprights. So that quarterback's looking one field on a go route, I could really start working that way. He pats it, I'm gone. Okay, another thing, right, when you're playing center field, think about the matchups in front of you if you're playing man. Who's going to need the help? Alright, so this is a good example of our curl flat player at the top. Right, checking 1, sees that it's a vertical route, gets underneath it. He can now play the comeback, the curl. If this guy runs a dig, he will deliver it to our inside, right? He's going to know what route it is out off this point based off quarterback tilt. If coach is a curl flat player, right? I'm the quarterback. Out here, come back. At you, it's a curl. Inside of you, that's going to be a dig. I need to work with it, pass it to the linebacker. Right? Now, right? We're trying to stop the run, 3rd and 2. We bring our safety down. This technique's going to change a little bit. Right? He gets his read, sees one. Now, I'd like for him at this point, because he's gotten the intel that he needs, right? This is just experience. He's got to know, based on this relationship, I can just drive this. He doesn't, gets his hands back late, right? Unfortunately, what could have been a big play was not. Okay, so now we have our seam player to the field, right? He wants to be outside of 2. Okay, 5-yard no cover zone, right? Now, this is where, right, continuing to teach your kids football, okay? This was a windy day, right? He thinks that ball's going over his head, right? When in doubt, just play through the receiver's hands. She does, turns, and does, right? Unfortunately, just like the last time, this should be a pick, right? Understanding that that ball's going to die, right? So when you're on the sideline, it's a fucking windy game, right? You have to tell kids, right, that that's going to affect the ball, trajectory of it, and all that kind of different things. No, we're going to get to the first. This is a really good clip of a deep third from a corner. Okay, right? 5 yards deeper than the deepest. Right? Split inverts, hanging a little bit closer to 2, just like we want. Right? Quarterback leaves a gift out there. He's able to break downhill, high point the football, make a play. Okay, so we're getting play action here. Okay, we're in our 3 under 3 deep, and all the same principles apply, right? He's pattern reading. He's reading number 2. We don't want that. Okay? We want to read the quarterback intentions. He's not 5 yards deeper than the deepest anymore. Jumps this route. And that's a touchdown. Right? You'll see quarterback intentions. Right? As soon as those shoulders start pointed up, is he throwing an over route at 15 yards? Nope, shoulders go up, ball goes up. Right? At this point, he should be breaking really at a 180 running back to the post. And there's the oh shit turn. Right, now another example. Okay, we're in cover 1 here, so this is more of your center field technique. Okay, so we're watching the post safety. Right, once again, he gets pattern reading. Right, wants to play that over route because it's right in front of his face. Post gets thrown over the top of him. And we go to the tight. You see quarterback intentions. Never, ever, ever take him to that over route. Staring the post down the entire time. Right? That's why, A, short quarterbacks sometimes actually are hard to go against, right? Because you can't see what they're looking at. But that's why we teach, right, from our post safety, reading the intentions of the quarterback, not reading 2 to 3 or any specific routes.
Coach, is there an initial depth kind of that you're telling those safeties to work to, or
down and distance and their ability?
Okay.
Like, are you talking about like in the cover 3 stuff or center field?
Just the middle of the field close. Is it, you know, yeah, you got to get to 18 yards and then see what, you know, obviously read what your receivers are doing, or is it just?
Well, no. So we'll be in the post reading the quarterback the whole time.
Okay.
So like I know a lot of people read 2 to 3 or 2 to 2. So my whole thing of why I don't do that is because to me then that just turns into Tampa 2. And your corner's got to know that, right? Because if I'm reading 2 to 2, I'm going to be slow in the post, which is fine. Like a lot of really good coaches do that.
I'm with you.
But for me, it's like if I'm doing that, if I'm reading receivers, I ain't reading the quarterback, and you know, unless you want to start looking at one, right, then you're not going to know a post is coming, which some people may do. But for me, it's like, you know, if 3 on a bender gets us, that ain't yours, right? That's on the will or the backside corner, right? I want to stay on that 2 on the hash to take that away, or always be able to play hash to hash, with also always being able to play the post, right? So any over route, that's part of the teaching, is like you're not responsible for that. And you see, obviously, you know, they don't always listen.
Right. That should go to the hook and curl the flat guys.
Correct, right? They got to force air under it, and then it's, you know, then it's on the backside corner. right, to read quarterback intentions. So like when we're in our cover 3 stuff, like they run a comeback, like we're not telling the corner to squeeze that. Like he might tempo down, right, but we're saying that curl flat player is going to take that comeback, right? Now I get my eyes on the quarterback, and if he's throwing the comeback, yeah, like let's drive it, right? But if he's looking the other side of the field, I already know the only route that I'm going to play is 3 on the bender.
Yeah.
Right? And the thing is, he's reading the post safety, right? You're in post safety, you're staying nice and deep, right? Then that should be his read. And now all of a sudden, he can't read that backside corner, and it should be a pick. Like for me, like I love cover 3 more than just about anybody you'll ever meet. And one of the reasons is because for me, you're inviting the team to throw the football down the field, and I got eyes on it. Now it's on me to coach these kids up. But while people look at 4 verts against cover 3 as like, oh shit, that's a huge opportunity, man. And we rep the shit out of it. That's all of our cover 3 stuff is based off of taking that away. And it's been to the point where, you know, the past 2 years, we haven't seen it a lot. It's kind of like one of those things like, well, we played, I think, close to 70% just country cover 3 safety outside roll down last year, and didn't get very much 4 verts. So now, and like we don't pattern read with our insides either. So when those guys drop, all their drops are based off of, right, is pushing the inside. If I'm the mic, I'm pushing the inside pad to 2, in a 2x2, right? I get pretty close to him, right? But then I'm just gonna sink back inside as that seam angle changes, right? So I'm pushing. If it's at 14, I need to be here. Now when it gets to 18, I need to be here, right? Because that line from the quarterback to the receiver changes, right? So we push our insides pretty heavy, right? Which allows our overhangs to expand a little bit faster. Now where we do get put in a bind is when teams put over the ball with the running back.
Right.
Because we don't tie the running back in our normal country cover 3 stuff.
I got you.
So that's where we've gotten into a little bit, and the way we handle that is we just make a spy call with our nose, right? He occupies the guard. If that back releases right up the middle of the field, he just jumps him. And it's something like Norwich did a really good job 2 years in a row. And then, you know, we made that spy call on a big 3rd down late in the game because they just kept going back to it. So it's one of those things where, you know, our cover 3, 100% based off of 4 verticals, react to anything else.
Yeah.
You guys got any other questions? Man, zone, you know, these are the 5 fights that we use in tackling. It's how we grade guys. The fight to track, fight to prepare, fight to connect, fight to accelerate, fight to finish. Looking like my time is up, unfortunately. But like I said, if you guys have any special teams questions, we'd be more than happy to talk about that as well. I know you got some false advertising here, so I'm sorry. But if you guys did want a clinic at any point about any of this stuff, any of the special teams stuff, we do run a shield punt, so if that matches up with you guys, we'd be more than happy to hop on a Zoom and help in whatever way I can, pick your guys' brain. You know, we can both learn from each other. Cool. Thanks, Jeff.